The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of the ANA or its members. On today's episode of On Scope, UPROXX Studios' Rich Antoniello joins me to discuss how brands can unlock the magic of music in marketing. And on This Week in ANA magazine, fractional CMOs, a disturbing new trend in the industry? All that next on Scope. Welcome to On Scope, the marketing podcast brought to you by the ANA and powered by ODESZA, a leading audio streaming platform. You can get your favorite podcasts, music, and entertainment on the ODESZA app. I'm your host, Mike Berberich, and with me as always, producer of On Scope, Ryan Dinger. Ryan, are you as excited as I am for today's episode?
Oh, you know that I am, Mike. You know, you mentioned there that our sponsor, ODESZA, you can listen to music on the app. And that's a topic that we're getting into today. And I couldn't be more excited because music is my favorite thing in the whole world. We're talking music. We're talking marketing. It's a perfect marriage, Mike.
It's two great tastes that taste great together. And yeah, music is central in both Ryan and my life. A little pulling back of the curtain. In our second lives, Ryan and I are actually co-producers on many different musical projects. And if you are a return listener to this podcast, first, we love you very much.
Yes, thank you so much.
And second, you've heard our work in the On Scope theme song.
That's right. We wrote it. We produced it. It's now live and out there, baby.
We contain multitudes. So there you go. Yeah, music is such an easy cultural entryway. It's no surprise that marketers love to go to that tool in their kit.
Who doesn't love a little music?
But absolutely.
You meet someone who doesn't like music, you're kind of like, what's up with this
Red
person?
flag.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. But for that all being as obvious as it is, our industry's batting average and really leveraging music to its fullest extent needs some work.
Woefully low.
Yes.
Below the Mendoza line there, if you like the batting average analogy.
And I do. And luckily we have got the perfect guest to talk about this. It is UPROXX Studios' Rich Antoniello. But as always, as I tend to, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Because first, we've got a really, really interesting conversation.
Yes, as always.
This week on ANA Magazine. Here to discuss what is new in ANA Magazine is our own Matthew Schwartz, Director of Content and Editorial Development here at the ANA and editor of our fine publication. How you doing, Matthew?
Doing okay. Good to see you, Mike.
Likewise. So, for the last several years, it's been something of a murderer's row for CMOs, right? They come in, there's a lot of great energy, fanfare, huzzas at the very beginning. They're talking about innovating. We're changing the game. We're shifting the paradigm here, folks. And then within like 3 or 4 years, they get bounced.
Yeah.
And it's all adding to a fairly regular churn of chief marketing officers kind of across industries from what I've been seeing. But you're here to tell me that ANA Mag is seeing that things may be stabilizing?
That's correct, Mike. We're actually seeing a bit of a shift. According to Ad Age, an executive search firm, Taligence, 43 global CMOs were hired in January. That's the largest monthly total recorded by Taligence since it began tracking CMO hires in 2023. And per Spencer Stewart's annual CMO tenure study, which is widely tracked in the business, CMO tenure is stabilizing at 4.2 years. So, kind of somewhat good news.
Yeah, can we post a W for CMOs? It's good news, right?
Not so fast, because there is a caveat, as with everything in marketing. And the caveat is that while more and more full-time CMOs are being hired, so too are so-called fractional CMOs or part-time CMOs. JCPenney being the latest brand to go this route. And our piece in A&A Magazine, which dropped last week, examines this trend in great detail.
That's great to hear, but while we're here at the pod, can you help our listeners understand here, aside from saving money in a stubborn economy, which is very understandable, what are the benefits of hiring a fractional CMO?
Well, there are a few. Gartner found that 67% of businesses see improved strategic direction and execution with the involvement of a fractional CMO.
67%? That is a surprising stat.
At first blush, yes, but hiring a fractional CMO also enables CMOs to focus on driving engagement and turbocharging lead revenue, which is what the C-suite wants from this role. And from that same perspective, fractional CMOs have a fairly short leash when it comes to being held accountable, which has been the whole issue surrounding marketing in the last decade or so.
So, no, that all makes perfect sense when you lay it out. Do you have any perspective on how this trend got started in the first place?
Yeah, I think it's been coalescing for the last several years, Mike. And it's a function of the C-suite saying, hey, we've tried to make marketing a profit center employing full-time CMOs, and it's just not working. So why not convert the model with a fractional CMO? Companies save on salaries and benefits, center the CMO on messaging and content creation, and farm out additional marketing responsibilities to other departments in the organization.
So, as this trend picks up momentum, because I could see the benefits, they're very clear, won't the CMO position start to be kind of like a mercenary?
Yes, though companies may not necessarily view that as a negative. As someone with knowledge about these things told me, it may just be where things are gravitating for marketing. The next few years will be crucial to determine how this all shakes out, but it's a stark indication that brands just may not be able to sustain the existing CMO model as it's currently constructed.
That's crazy. I mean, this would be a seismic shift for CMOs, but also the marketing teams that report to them.
Without a doubt, with ripple effects throughout the entire organization.
And as usual, A&A Magazine has got it covered. To catch up on the current state of fractional CMOs and pick up even more marketing know-how, head on over to ana.net/publications. And while you're there, don't forget to take the weekly A&A Magazine quiz and see just how strong your marketing smarts are. Thanks as always, Matthew.
Thanks, Mike.
And now, back to our show. And there we have another edition of This Week in A&A Magazine. Fractional CMOs, Ryan.
Fascinating stuff. I personally don't know how much I like this trend. I think it's kind of problematic, and I'm wondering what's going to happen with your brand. Like, are we now putting CMOs in the gig economy?
Yeah.
Right? Like, are they gonna be like posting on Fiverr looking for freelance work? I think it kind of discredits the marketing practice, which I would imagine most of our listeners are not big fans of. Yep. And I wonder about the long-term implications of the brand with that. If you're just cycling through these individuals and you don't have a cohesive point of view throughout, what happens to your brand? And so I'm a little skeptical myself.
Yeah, that was my first thought of like. Brand is supposed to be foundational. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be flexible without changing every couple of years, let alone months. Mm-hmm. You know, does having different champions of it, different protectors of it on a fiscal quarterly basis, does that really set up that brand for sustainable success?
Yes.
Now, I do want to bring up one thing that has been laid out to me about fractional CMOs. For a company that is going through like major change, like either going from startup to like established brand or going from a category challenger to a marketing leader, there could be in that gestation transformation period, there could be some use to it. There could be, you get a performance marketing expert to just hit those numbers if there's in a financing round or something like that. There are some short-term things when you're making a transformation where you're going from one thing to another unrecognizable, completely different thing. Mm-hmm. You might benefit from different people shepherding you through those little mini phases. But for a brand that is just, I don't know. I think that's the only thing where I heard that and was like, okay, I could see that happening as a long-term strategy. I'm just not sure.
I'm reminded of our episode with Maggie Gross and how she talked
Mhm.
about performance marketing, and you just keep hitting the button, performance, 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 and then the effectiveness of that sort of dwindles year over year over year, and 5 years later you're like, okay, we need to now move back into brand and get back to the numbers we were doing with that. And then the executives are wondering, like, well, how come the brand marketing isn't working anymore? And you're like, well, because you neglected the brand for 5 years, so you lost all the equity that you had built. Seems like it could be sort of a similar trend there, but
Yeah.
hey, they don't pay me to make those decisions. I'm just a humble podcast producer. What do I know?
Well, the thing that it reminds me of is when you see a sports franchise try to win a championship by like hiring 3 stars and never bothering to build a team.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like that's just it.
Some of my
smacks
favorite
that.
sports teams are undergoing that very thing right now, unfortunately, for me.
Yeah, well, I'll say a little prayer. But now we are on to the main event
Yes,
of
we are.
today's
Ooh, baby.
show. It's time to get into music and marketing, and like I said earlier, we have the perfect guest.
Yes, we do.
We have the founder of Complex Magazine on the pod.
Wow.
He was the CEO for 19 years there.
Unbelievable.
And now he is just rounding up his first full year as executive chairman at UPROXX Studios. Get ready for my conversation with Rich Antoniello. We are live here at A&A Studios, and I have with me Rich Antoniello, the executive chairman of UPROXX Studios. Rich, thank you for stopping by the studio, man. I really
Thank you for having me.
Dude,
any chance I get to talk.
Let's go. I was going to say, I'm so looking forward to this conversation, so let's just dive right in.
Nothing like setting the bar up here.
Well, come on now. You know what? You're going to clear it.
Oh, of course. That goes without saying, but you don't know me that well yet.
So let's jump right in. We're here to talk about UPROXX Studios, which, as I just mentioned, you happen to be the executive chairman of. This is such a cool-ass idea. Could you just kind of, give us a high-level idea of what it is, and how did this come to fruition?
Well, it's easy. I'll do both of those at the same time.
Hit me.
So if you really... It's a new company, by the way. Not a new brand, but a new company. As of April 22nd, 2024, we were able to extricate UPROXX, Dime, and Hip Hop DX, which were brands that were owned by Warner Music, and the Warner Music license of their YouTube. And let me explain what that means, because most people are like, what the hell does that mean, right? So Warner Music is the only major label that is not a part of Vivo. Vivo, UMG, Sony. So all of those artists, and there's this little thing called YouTube, which is now usurped television.
I've heard of it.
This little thing, rather successfll. The kids kind of like
it. It's a startup,
it these days,
but I
right?
think it's got some future.
Yeah, I think it might be crapping EBITDA.
Yeah.
So, which is always good, but they are music. People do not understand how important and how big it actually is on YouTube. Like, yes, there's Mr. Beast and other things like that. But when an artist now breaks a song, the viewership of their videos and then their catalog, it's almost as large as streaming is for a lot of artists from a monetization perspective. And Warner is the largest independent from a YouTube perspective. So with the brands, we took the sales rights to all of their artists, whether it's Bruno Mars, Dua Lipa, Megan Thee Stallion. So think about, and by the way, a lot of other older artists as well.
Oh, yeah.
But this catalog is gigantic. And the amount of scale and viewership of super premium. So unlike a lot of digital nowadays, which is consumed on social, YouTube is not really, it's a lean back consumption platform where TikTok and Instagram and even Facebook still are more push oriented for publishers. This is where people come and seek out something on a specific basis, highly engaged content, not swipeable. So it's the most premium content in the world, this license. It's people who are searching out for it and spending time in the most engaged way. And we have it at scale. To give you a for instance, right, of the kind of I threw out these artists, and you're like, okay, that's probably big. At any given time, at any 3-hour time frame, no matter what target audience an advertiser or a brand might want to reach, we can give you as much, if not more, scale against any demographic than the Super Bowl does at any given time.
That is so wild. And you actually kind of beautifully set up the next thing I want to talk about.
But hold on.
Hit me.
So hold on. So that's the scale side of the business. And it's very premium scale. But then there's the brand portfolio. Yes. So in this day and age, especially from a digital perspective, a lot of advertisers or brands or even consumers are looking for a very specific relationship with content. So the brand side, UPROXX, Hip Hop DX, and Dime are creating a lot of the narrative and the overall messaging that is out there on top of the music. It's totally related. Music is the kind of the tent pole and the stick in the ground that kind of emanates everything else. Sports is great, but it's very dependent on live.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
The flexibility that music has, plus the premium nature of it and its level of impact and influence is off the charts.
Yes.
So you combine all of that with the brand side of our discussion, and we're kind of like the only game in town. We also integrate brand and scale together to be able to create a kind of a very unique experience for our brands and advertisers.
That's super cool. And I just kind of realized as you were laying it out there, that's like advertising distilled and marketing distilled. You get to tell the story and you get to tell it in front of several billion people.
That's right. And in the most targeted way possible as well. So it's not just a great narrative. It's not just a fundamental understanding, and it's not just scale. It's also constructed by the most respected and impactful and influential people as well.
And we're going to get to that because I really do want to put a pin in that specific thing. But you said it, and it bears repeating. Music is a singular force on this planet. It is the last thing that stays with us in the brain as we get older and things happen and this and that. It is the most powerful force on
Second
Earth,
to none.
I would say. I think so. We're in agreement of that. Obviously, marketers see that as a great entryway. Like, we're going to do this. Everybody loves this. We're going to put it behind our ad and it's going to be wonderful. And like almost all of them boof it spectacularly. Like, why is that gap there from, like, obviously the idea is there. What's happening in the execution?
So look, the interest, it's not the idea is not there. That's the problem. The interest is there. And even the alignment might be there with, like, kind of the commercial or their narrative. What a lot of people don't do is fill in the blanks, right? They go, here's a big target audience. Here's, Megan Thee Stallion's dropping her new album. We know it's going to be it's going to be dominating all of the social conversations. Yep. And then everybody's going to want to go see it. And then I'm going to be the first thing they see even before that video. Like, think about it. It's not a complicated thing. Now, your message needs to match that level of relevance, of newness. It needs to tie in at least tangentially to her and that video and contemplate that. It can't be obtuse or it can't be combating against that, which is where a lot of people go wrong. Because they're like, oh, it's the right context. I'm just going to throw my message in there. And again, that's where the level of expertise of our strategy team, our marketing team, our sales team, and even our content development team, the ability to tailor that message specifically for the distribution and the content is second to none. Yeah. The same way music is from an influence and impact basis.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tightrope to combine the kind of like corporate objectives and like effective marketing with the raw F you, I won't do what you tell me, just unbridled energy of music. So very, very impressive to thread the needle in that sense.
Well, let's go a little deeper with what you just said. Because there's a lot of buzzwords and jargon on the corporate objective side. one thing that we focus on, and I think this is where a lot of people get lost, is they get lost in, oh, well, this is the word or your description or anything like that. Well, my big thing and what our team does, and these guys have worked with me and for the chief revenue officer and the chief strategy officer both have been with me for at least 13 years. Oh, so they came over when I came over in the deal, and we restructured a lot of things. Their level of understanding of, yes, this might be how you're thinking about your brand is represented, but really, what is the net objective and the benefit of what we can provide? That's where people go wrong, is they're not thinking about that net benefit. Don't get lost in the how. Get lost in what it produces, right? Mm-hmm. And, the experience covers off on the how of knowing how to have that conversation. But being exceptionally cognizant and results-oriented for your clients is also something that where a lot of brands and publishers fall short.
Yeah, and it's kind of insane. My producer Ryan and I were talking a couple of weeks back of speaking of the Super Bowl that you brought up earlier, 3/4 of the ads this year, it's what did you hope that was going to do?
Well, it's people checking a box. Yeah. They're checking a box on reach, right? Yes. They go, we're... Now, look, some of those brands are only looking for awareness. They're probably not even... if they get conversion, great, but they're looking at that as top-down advertising, yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah. So, you got to be fair to understand. To me, it was weird because I think there was a greater preponderance, a greater number and ratio of ads that seemed out of place on a contextual basis than ever before. Usually there's one or two where you're it's a little bit of a head scratcher. I feel like almost within each pod, you could find one that was a little off. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's also because the dearth of things, you have to remember everything is almost a long tail now, right? Mm-hmm. Everything is subscale. Yeah. And you have to cobble together a whole bunch of usual places rather than come to us or a couple of other people. The Super Bowl is one of the last bastions of insane scale. Right. That is must see. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right? So it's a combination of live sports, must see, and it's a cultural moment, not just a sports moment. It transcends, right? So the opportunity to have a different conversation there is unlike anything else, but I think a lot of people just look at it as raw eyeballs. Yeah. Well said. Very well said. So now going back to so people are listening, obviously, I don't think anybody out there's I don't know about this music thing, but, who knows? That's not the education side of it. Right. The education side of it now is how the media has changed, right? Yes. The lack of understanding and accurate measurement of impact and influence, and I'm not, the last thing I'm doing is going after or downplaying creators. I think they have a ton of influence. However, the scale, reach on TikTok is not equal to reach on YouTube. Correct. A subscriber is worth a lot more than a follower there. Absolutely. And a view is worth a lot more than a view someplace else. And people, there's not enough discerning buyers and planners out there at clients and at agencies that are making that level of delineation. Mm-hmm. That's the education. Yeah. No one's questioning the validity and the importance of music. I think a lot of people sometimes, and to be fair to them, they're probably working on 7 clients and have no time and also shrinking budgets. So a lot of times cheaper alternatives, like the bottom as an entry point, rather than assigning value, it's just absolute cost versus relative value in CPM. And that's where I think a lot of people need to get a lot more sophisticated. Yeah, 1,000%. Now, I'd like to talk, you mentioned this kind of mind-blowing case study that you shared that really puts the kind of
fine point on the fact that like anybody listening to this being like, well, I'm not Red Bull, so like I'm not doing anything crazy with music. That is such an outdated and like loser mentality, frankly, because you shared with me a case study that is brilliant, and if you wouldn't mind unpacking it for our listeners,
Sure.
I was just jaw dropped with this. It's so cool.
And it really is, and thank you for that, by the way. So
truly, no smoke.
I don't have to throw a whole bunch of adjectives and adverbs on top of it now. But look, and I give Fred and Jarrett and Chris Mask and the team and Jeff all the credit in the world for what they were able to pull off and do. Qualcomm came to us with a challenge. Mm-hmm. Qualcomm, technology company.
Yep.
Probably wouldn't be if you and this is not a knock on them. But if you thought about music, like the maybe they're the 80th brand that you would think about, right? So you're thinking about a lot of other sectors.
Yeah.
And they came to us and they wanted very badly to be recontextualized. They had an AI product that was and a new chip in their computers that are next level. And instead of talking about gigabytes or things that are very vertically technology oriented, right, they wanted to enter to the mainstream audience and give them an opportunity for us to partner with them to kind of reintroduce Qualcomm to them through the creative route of music. So we came up, the team, I had nothing to do with this, by the way, whatsoever.
Very gracious of you.
No, it's not gracious. Believe me, I literally had nothing to do with this. I was worried with larger strategic things at this point. But this is how good the team is. They're like, okay, it's Qualcomm, it's a chip, but instead of going to the band itself, let's think about ODESZA. ODESZA, and again, I'm not an EDM guy, so I would have never come up with this. Mm-hmm. They're known to put on some of the greatest shows in EDM, possibly even bigger and better than like Swedish House Mafia, just to kind of contextualize that for the listeners, right? Mm-hmm. And the creative director is also this amazing woman who is, to say she redefines stage shows is the understatement of the world.
Dag.
And and by the way, she did this well before we came up with this. And what we did is like, okay, now let's superpower her. So we're bringing in the brand of Qualcomm and specifically their product, directly integrating it into the development of this stage show. And that became the content. So, and then of course the reveal of the stage show and the way people emotionally, and you saw, people were crying. I mean, millions of people were crying, mm-hmm, right? We had the 400,000 or 500,000 at the event, and then all of the social and the emotional connection. But going back, so we got the creative director to use the new AI and the Qualcomm computer to create and to level up even her talents.
That's so sick.
Which ended up in these mirrored, because listen, like EDM is definitely about the music, but it's more about the emotional connection with music and the audience than any other genre.
1000%.
So we were like, she was like, if it was about that, then let's make it about the audience. So we have these gigantic mirrored things that you would walk through and experience the music at different times in different ways and see yourself and everyone else. So it was kind of like holding a mirror up to the audience, for lack of a better, but on a next level,
right,
using their technology. The integration was seamless. It made Qualcomm seem as cool as I think you can make any technology look. And it exploded. It made a lot of news. The organic reach and scale of this was off the charts. Everybody was proud of it. So when artists organically want to share their content, not contractually,
yeah,
that's when you have real talent working on the development of these ideas. And then we were able to take their scale and the scale of the license and promote this even larger. So again, we had brand plus scale, but really it was the work and the creative development of the perfect messaging within the perfect context on a massive distribution scale that just made it check every box you could possibly do. And, again, that's all that our team is best in class.
Yeah, dude.
Fred, Jeff, Jarrett, Chris. I want to make sure I get everybody.
Yeah.
Like these, Phil. You're talking about just the best of the best, and people have been doing it for a long time too.
Yeah, dude. And I think I'm so glad you said that the magic was the work. Putting the work into it, because this could have so easily been an ODESZA song with AIs summarizing your emails and making your PowerPoint 10% better, and it would have done nothing.
And 99% of other publishers, that's exactly what they would do.
Literally, I was running that ad in my head when you were kind of exploring this thing. So you've mentioned them a bunch, and when we come back, we're going to dive into exactly how you put together this Avengers-like team that has been doing this transcendent work right after this. Man, Ryan, I have been having so much fun this episode.
Yeah, it's been a good one.
Yeah.
Good one. Rich is bringing the goods.
Oh, my God.
Personally, I'm a little fired up, Mike.
Yeah, dude, you know what has been happening with a lot of these episodes? I can see it's the last question. I'm like, I don't want this to end. I want to extend this magic. I want to live in this world of possibilities forever, Ryan.
Yeah. If only it were possible.
I know. It sounds a little unhinged, but I think I might have a solution.
Ooh, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, well, if you listeners are fired up like we're fired up, you got to take it further. And the place to do that is the 2025 ANA Digital and Social Media Conference. This is taking place July 14th through the 16th in Carlsbad, California, and virtually, but jeepers creepers, get your butts out to Carlsbad.
SoCal in July?
Yeah, you really can't beat it. And if you've never been there, it really should be called Carl's Good, because it's fantastic. It's really doing itself a disservice with the name. But anyway, Ryan, this is where the industry leaders who are pushing the boundaries of digital storytelling, creator collaborations, and social commerce are going to talk real results. They're going to talk real strategies, and they're going to share real-world case studies that show how brands are turning cultural connection into business impact. And ain't that something that would make any CEO smile from ear to ear?
Yeah, a lot of real results, real strategies, and real world case studies. I mean, it's funny because when you think about digital and social media, so much of what occurs on there, and not from our brands and our partners, I'm not saying this, but
of course,
so much of it is not real.
Yeah.
And that's the exact opposite of what they're doing with this conference. And me personally, Mike, this is probably my favorite ANA event every year. I love the Digital and Social Media Conference.
It really is. It's got such a fresh energy to it. People are talking about the bleeding edge. You're going to soak in the insights and the sun all in one. And if that sounds good to you, you need to go check out the full agenda and save your spot now by visiting ana.net/2025digital. And now, back to our show. And we're back. My guest, Rich Antoniello, the executive chairman at UPROXX Studios. We've been talking a lot about great work, and you've been very, very cool in shouting out this team. But I want to talk about the approach to putting this team together, because I feel like you have taken the opposite approach of what so much of our industry does, and it is kind of, at least partially, the secret sauce behind this team. Talk to us about this.
So there's a lot of different ways to look at that. And the last thing I'm doing is trying to knock down people and younger people who are, from the social first perspective and other things like that. I do have a little bit of a different view. For me, I'm a big sports fan. So I think about construction of putting all of the best players in each of their positions, right? And so on the actual like content development, distribution, and two-way conversation of social, I agree, having a lot of younger people doing that is fantastic. On this higher level, super creative, checking corporate boxes, being able to like have mass scale, there's a level of experience that is needed. So you want, maybe the savvy quarterback who's not going to get rattled by, not to make a play here, but you want a savvy quarterback who's not going to get rattled by a blitz, right? So you can have the very dynamic young slot receiver or the like you're in the talent position, the skill positions.
Right.
But to me, that's the way you construct a team, right? It's like who's running, who's the coach on the field, who's calling the plays, who's making sure everybody's doing their job, who's going to keep it calm, and then who are your standouts, your hi-hats and other things like that. So it's this great combination. There's two other people. We have we call them the two Steves, that are the magic of the execution of these things as well. So those are those dynamic skill players. They're kind of like Randy Moss and Justin Jefferson, right?
Right.
I dated myself with the Randy Moss reference, but
Yeah, you're fine.
I'm old, so it's all good. But those guys are that, and then you have like Fred and Jeff are like Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski, right? Like it's like they're gonna like do the dirty work and all the the big strategy stuff. They're just amazing. And then look, you got to remember, I'm not the day-to-day coach.
Right.
So you have Bill Belichick and let's call that's Jarrett, who is the CEO, who is, I don't know if I have ever met anyone who on a combination basis knows more about music, understands how the second thing is how the business of music works, because he was the founder of Raucous Records and sold that to UMG, and on top of it understands how to talk to artists and use artists effectively. And then this level of tactical creativity and effort that the Steves bring to the table. It really is a magic team, right? And everyone knows their roles, and it's a small but mighty team. I mean, you got to remember, our whole staff is maybe 43 people.
Dang.
So we're able to do
a lot.
It's a huge business with tons of revenue. We're kind of the anomaly in digital. Usually digital have big staffs and lower revenues. We have a very small staff with that punches well above their weight on a capabilities basis, and is this great diverse squad of entry points and people and talents and experience. That's the one thing where I don't take a lot of credit for a lot of things. I happen to be very good at understanding what is needed, who's going to be good, and how it's going to all work together. Not just any one singular piece, but if that piece doesn't fit with the rest of the jigsaw, it's useless.
Yeah.
No matter how good that piece is.
100%.
So that's where I tend to be good about kind of constructing that level and putting it all together in that way.
You're the maestro. Got to get the orchestra.
Maestro, I'll take that one. I'll go with that.
Come on now. But another thing that in an earlier conversation, I love that you started with passion and cultural kind of embeddedness. Like hard skills, we can okay, you don't know this media platform, we can get you up on this or that ad buy, whatever the hell. But I feel like so often people will get somebody who's great at content and then they're like, let me tell you about hip hop. And that is just not going to work.
So you're hitting on something very important, right? And look, it was something that I did for 21 years in building Complex before we sold it the second time. Cool. But if you think about the magic that was produced there and the magic that is now being produced here, you always have to start, whether it's the idea. But the idea is driven from your people, right? Because it's media.
Right.
So whether it's a content idea or a branded content idea or an outright advertising or marketing idea, the bottom line is we always started with people who understood our culture, the impact and influence of that culture, and the relevance and why it was relevant, right? That level of differentiation. And then you could teach them the skills, right? And that's it's a little harder sometimes, but it's much more pure. And I use that word very deliberately. The purity. And purity produces authenticity and credibility. And the only way to do that is you got to walk that walk, and you have to understand it. You have to understand the references, and then you can iterate off of references and other things like that. The deeper you have your little bag of references and understanding, the deeper that bag is, the more impactful ideas you will be able to develop, because it's a twist, it's an iteration, it's a reference. All of those things build, and that goes to my point about experience as well, right? It's not just what you've done for other people, but like just being around and seeing all of these things that have occurred both in genres of music and also occurred in advertising and marketing and social at this point, right? The whole arcs of these things. Having that level of understanding across the board is really important. And again, I'm very lucky, knock wood, that I'm able to. We have constructed a super all-star team that doesn't need a whole lot of large-scale strategic support. Their level of consistency backed up with the pride and the effort as well, like that usually doesn't go together, and we have anomalies there as well.
So Rich, this has been such a pleasure, just chopping it up. But from one ranter to another, I wanted to give you a little opportunity to let loose. Let's take the gloves off.
I feel like I already have, to a certain degree. But...
I feel like you're gonna appreciate this opportunity.
Around what specific?
Well, this is what I was gonna say. Do you have any feelings or opinions on IP and how our industry approaches it?
Okay, so well, first of all, let's start with the biggest problem.
Let me put on my bulletproof.
No. Like, let's start with the first layer, the top of the funnel of the conversation. The first third is any new idea is not IP.
Mm-hmm.
Like the overusage and lack of understanding of what the definition of intellectual property is, and established intellectual property, is severely lacking, right? So you have that problem. Also, people do not... The other side of that is very interesting, actually, right? So I say this all the time, and I've been saying this for 20 years, is we've never seen a generation more brand conscious, yet less brand loyal at the same time, right?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Right? Which is two things. Number one, it's really scary for the leader, and it should be really exciting for the challenger brands. But it also applies to IP. Now, but it applies differently to IP. I recently, especially if you really think about this, and you think about even white hot shows, Stranger Things, it kind of started with like Lost, where the first 2 seasons are amazing, and then and you can build a relevant piece of IP faster than ever before. However, you get 1/3 as much time to exploit IP as you used to. The relevance, and I'm not saying, I just don't think you're ever going to see a Seinfeld ever again. Like something that, dictated culture for 9 years.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't work that way anymore, right? So when you think about IP, you have to think about something that has an innate ability to scale very quickly. You have to think about the monetization and also you used to be able to monetize IP one way, right? You could go sell it, or like it's a movie, or it's merchandise or whatever it is. Now you need all of it. You need a diversified revenue plan from day one of where it can go if it caught fire.
Yep.
You need to anticipate what its iterations are before you even launch it the first time, because it might be 6 or 9 months where you have to iterate it rather than 3 years.
Yeah.
So this is where, I just think about development of IP in this day and age, and how dynamic it's become, and how the acumen from a business perspective and the monetization of it has not followed suit in being as dynamic. People are starting to be more dynamic. You see it with the creator economy and other things like that, but it's still a fraction of where it needs to be. And then, you know, a lot of people really don't protect their IP either. I'm going to give a huge shout out to the team at First We Feast, which was formerly owned by Complex,
Yep.
And started there and incubated there. And by the way, it's not just Hot Ones. Everybody thinks of Hot Ones, and it's amazing. But there's, you know, Justin and Sarah and Chris and Sean are like one of the most talented teams in the world that create, you know, Pizza Wars, The Burger Show, so much culturally relevant food programming that's amazing, and of course Hot Ones. Mm-hmm. And this is where I want to give Chris and Sean specifically, and Sarah, this amazing shout out of the understanding of protecting that brand, the audience, the relationship. I think a lot of people, a lot of other publishers, wouldn't have had the patience to grow the audience because it took longer than people think. Yeah. That was hardly an overnight success. Right. Number one. And I give them a lot of credit for the consistent effort and creativity to iterate that show, stay true to it, build an audience that is probably more loyal than any digital publishing audience that I can think of. And the creativity was never, the monetization was never exploitative. It was organic. Whether it was Truth or Dab, our game on Amazon, or our hot nuggets at Walmart, or working with Heatonist to develop our own hot sauces, you know, integrating Sean into the Super Bowl and doing like a Hot Ones episode in the pregame. You know, it's a phenomenon and an anomaly, but it's a deliberate one. And I want to make sure, to me, they are the modern day story of IP, of how to develop it, how to think about it, and how to monetize it, and the diversification of the revenue and other things like that, the syndication of the show. There's nothing that hasn't been thought of and done, yet protected. And you look at the loyalty of that audience, and it's coming up on 8 years and 20 some odd seasons. So, and you're not seeing any loss, you're still seeing gain of momentum.
Oh my God, yeah.
So they're a little bit of an anomaly, and I just want to make sure that I give them credit in that respect, because, you know, that's the way you need, and all of this is true about IP, right? But it's just, I think you still have a lot of people thinking about IP in its most traditional sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you just set that all up, because it goes back to the work thing. It's like, this is not supposed to be easy, because what has it been generating? Like, this level of loyalty, this level of consistency of audience. But yeah, I wanted to give you a moment of that. I know we kind of have a lot of the same things. It always reminds me of like a guy who's never written a screenplay, and is like, I got this idea for a movie. I can't tell it to you because it's so good. It's like, your idea isn't shit if you don't know how to write it, if you're not going to take the time to make it.
And I got news for you. It is probably 99% derivative, 1% different.
Yes, always.
Most likely.
Yes, you know, Hamlet meets fill in the blank.
Right. So it is, you know, and people need to be intellectually honest a little bit more. But, you know, there are people that are breaking the mold and doing amazing things out there.
Well, cheers to the wild ones out there. Rich, this was so much fun, such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being a guest.
100%. And and by the way, right back at you. It was a lot of fun.
Come back and we'll do it again sometime.
You got it.
There we have it, another episode of On Scope, the Marketing Podcast. I want to thank my guest, Rich Antoniello, for taking us behind the scenes at UPROXX Studio and showing us music and marketing at its finest. As a reminder, if you have an idea for an upcoming topic or guest, we'd love to hear from you. onscope@ana.net. And, last but not least, your moment of marketing meditation. Take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, and consider the following words by the piano man himself, Billy Joel. I think music in itself is healing. It's an explosive expression of humanity. It's something we are all touched by. No matter what culture we're from, everyone loves music. Think on that, and we'll see you next week.